My guest overcame years of her own struggles with food and body image to become an author, a personal trainer, and a body image expert. She's the author of the new book, The Good Stripper, a soccer mom's memoir of lost lies and lap dances. Her name is Marci Warhaft. Marci, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to talk to you. I got to tell you, I love the title of your book. I love it. It's got a ring to it. You know what I mean?
The rest of
If you ever turn your story into a movie, like you're set. So I heard about your story. We talked off the air. You have an amazing story of resilience and strength and overcoming loss. And we live in a digital age in which certain celebrities now and Instagram models, they've created this kind of fictitious perception of what beauty's supposed to be.
mm,
And, you know, they're idolized by girls around the world. And these girls don't realize that these people utilize Photoshop, and they've got lighting, and they've got makeup artists, and they've got hair specialists, and all this stuff. And I think the body image issues, they've existed for years, as you're going to talk about. But I think that it's becoming a major thing now with the internet. And that's why I wanted to tell your story. So I want to start by talking about your childhood.
mhm,
Your dad left when you were 10. Your older brother became the man of the house.
mhm.
He was a very positive influence on you. And when you were 17, he got sick, and unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 21.
Right.
That led to your struggles with body image and with food.
Mhm.
Can you talk about your childhood and talk about what happened to your dad and what happened to your brother?
Sure. I mean, I always say on paper, kind of what was supposed to be the perfect childhood. Two parents, older brother, older sister. I was the baby of the family. I was very, very close with my mom and with my brother. And when I was 10, my parents split. And at the time, I was the first kid in my school whose parents got divorced. It wasn't the thing that it is now. And that was a struggle. And my father, I don't have a lot of memories with him, like great memories before they divorced. But my father just, he had his own struggles, I guess. And he didn't want the responsibility of being a father when
Mm.
we split up. And so he left and left. Like that
Was
was
he
it.
young at the time?
Was he young?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I would guess, well, let me think about this now. I'd say he was about 40, if I had to guess.
Okay. Okay.
And
By then, you should have it together, but all right.
well, for sure. But he just, you know what I always say? It's funny. He was at work and he was sort of hanging around with a younger crowd. It was like he was got into the wrong group of people, and he was the big shot, and he it was the whole wine, women, and song thing, and he decided to left, and then left my mom with three kids, and there was no child support, there was no spousal support, there was nothing, and that was tough. But at the same time, my mother was amazing, and the rest of us just got really close, and we just made it. We were just, so I was still, that was tough, but I was still a really happy kid. I was still a really loved. I still felt really safe and really protected. I was very encouraged to do anything, be anything, speak out. So I was doing well. And then when I was 17, well, what happened was my brother, he became the man of the house, but it was even more than that. My brother was, I describe him in my book as the invisible armor that I wore out in the world. He was just, he really was the best big brother. He knew when to stand in front of me to protect me. He knew when to stand behind me to encourage me to stand up for myself. He was very loving. He was very warm, very protective, and just fun. And I looked, he was to me the sun and the moon and the stars. He could do no wrong. And when I was 17, he got sick. He probably got sick earlier than that. It was with a hereditary liver disease that he showed no symptoms for most of his life.
Really?
Uh, yeah, so that was what was tough. He was misdiagnosed a bunch. And I don't remember him being sick. It wasn't like it was years and years of it, not in my memory. And I was the baby, so they also tried to protect me from it. So when he started to get really sick and he needed a transplant, even then, I still thought he's going to be fine. It's Billy. Like, he's going to be fine. He's 21. He's healthy. He's strong. He's always athletic. So I was literally in the middle of writing my English exam in grade 11 when my vice principal came into the room and took my papers and said, "Follow me." And that's a big deal to be taken out of an exam,
Hmm.
my final exam of high school. And I was taken into the office, and my uncle was there, and I was told that Billy had died. And I was not prepared at
Hmm.
all. And for a lot of reasons, I think for one thing, to me, he was this really strong, healthy kid. I didn't know. I knew a few people who had lost a grandparent, maybe, but nobody had lost a sibling. And I mean, at that age, I mean, it was just, I always say that the minute before I heard that he had died was the last time I felt safe in the world, completely safe.
Right.
It changed my whole outlook on everything. That was a defining moment in my life. There have been a few, but that was one of them, because I learned from his death that we're not safe. That's what I learned. Like, if that can happen to him, it can happen to anybody. And at 17, it's when you usually feel like you're indestructible. And I didn't. I realized, oh God, anything can happen. And then I also felt, and this was sort of the driving force of years, unfortunately, I felt that it should have been me. I felt that if any of us, my brother or sister or I, were going to get this, it should have been me, because he was such a good person. And I didn't feel that I had as much to offer the world as he did. And I felt that if I was going to be here instead of him, I had to earn my spot. I had to be, it couldn't just be average. I had to be spectacular. And it didn't feel spectacular. And
Right.
so I sort of went through the rest of my life saying, it should have been me. It should have been me.
I read something in addition to all of this. I read something, this is almost like a side story here. Your stepfather was a bank robber?
Doesn't that happen to everybody? Yeah. So,
How did that happen?
I know. So, right. So my parents had gotten divorced. This was years later. A friend of my mom's had introduced her to a cousin of hers. Anyway, friend of a friend, met this man, and my mother had actually known him years ago, and he had just moved back from the States. And I was probably, I'm going to guess, it was maybe 2 years before my brother passed away. So met this guy who's a caterer, and I was always so fascinated with food, and he was great, and everybody loved him, and they moved in together, and he would take me to the markets where he got his food, and he would tell me in detail about everything every wedding that he was catering, every party he was catering. He would tell me in detail what he was cooking, and they ended up, he moved in with us, and then my brother became ill, and Billy passed away, and then my mom married him. And they weren't even married. They were married a few months, I think. And every 2 weeks, Eddie he would get up really early in the morning, like at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and he would have to cook this church breakfast. And so he would be gone all day cooking and preparing and serving and cleaning, and every 2 weeks. And my sister and I would have to be really quiet the night before, because he would be getting up early to go and work. And it was one day I got back from school late at night, and I found out that Eddie had been arrested because he wasn't a caterer. He was a bank robber.
Wow.
They called him the Satchel Bandit, or Satch for short.
They actually gave him a name.
Yes, because he carried a little bag with him like a satchel. He was wanted for 42 counts of bank robbery over 2 years.
Wow.
And so at every 2 weeks, he wasn't catering. He was getting up early to drive from Montreal to Toronto to rob a bank and then drive back. So, my sister and I were quite angry that we had to be so quiet the night before he was.
Yeah.
So he got caught in the act, and then we found out that he'd done that in the States, and yeah, and then so it was. I felt really horrible for my mom, because she had just lost my brother, and then less than a year later, she finds out that my stepfather is a complete sociopath. So
what happened to him?
He got the maximum, which was, at the time, you get 21 years. But in Canada, you serve a third. So I'm sure he's out. I've tried to find him, but I have no idea.
Wow. I'm telling you, there's gonna be a movie made about your story. It's amazing. So going back to the other issues we talked about. So you grew up and you were doing good things. You were accepted into a prestigious theater school because, you had a dance background. You got married, you had 2 boys, but your food disorder was always there. I read a quote from you. You said, quote, "Food was the weapon I used to hurt myself." Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, that's, again, eating disorders are confusing. and they're complicated. And, I work with kids and I work with parents, and I always tell parents, don't try to understand it, because we don't understand it. Like, they don't make sense. You can look at the most beautiful person and not understand how they see themselves, but we see ourselves very, very differently. Food was the weapon, because there were times when I was trying to make myself as small as possible because I wanted to disappear. There are times when I wanted to fill myself, and actually my disorder it went from anorexia to compulsive exercising to overeating. There's so many different variations of eating disorders, which is misunderstood as well. I kind of feel like I did it all in a way. And so that particular line, I remember writing it in a poem, actually, and that was when I was overeating. And it was emotional pain is something that is really hard to understand because we don't see it. We feel it, but we don't see it. Physical pain is much easier to understand. You cut yourself, you bleed, you see it, you get that. It's easier. When you're feeling deep, deep emotional pain, it's really hard to wrap your head around it. So with food, when I was binge eating, let's say, and I would eat so much that I would feel physical pain, it was easier for me to deal with that than to deal with whatever the emotional pain that I was dealing with. So food was the weapon. Either I was restricting myself from it and I would feel ill from not eating it, or I was overeating it and feeling pain from eating it. But that physical pain was easier for me to deal with than the emotional pain.
Now, after you got married, I understand that you dealt with some tough times. You lost your mom, which we'll talk about in a minute. You experienced a couple of miscarriages. And I understand that you had issues with your marriage in terms of your husband being manipulative. You wrote that he had you take part in sexual misadventures, was the words that you used.
Well, yeah, but I have to be careful with that because I felt manipulated. We have, an amicable relationship. It wasn't an abusive situation. I wasn't forced, and I think it's really important to say that. I wasn't forced into any sexual misadventures. It was me coming out of a time or not coming into a time. I had dealt with a tremendous amount of trauma, different kinds of trauma, one after another, could not catch my breath, and I had just gotten out of the hospital where I had dealt with a near fatal illness, and I was in the hospital for months, and then had a baby, and I was really not quite feeling myself, and I was quite vulnerable. And at that point, again, we'd had a good relationship, but I believe that that at a time when I needed my partner to sort of pull me close and protect me when I wasn't feeling quite like myself. I believe that he saw it more as an opportunity to include me in maybe some things that he was interested in doing that I had said no to in the past. And I wasn't strong enough or on level enough ground to say no.
And when you mention taking on a second persona, you essentially did start to take on a double life because, during the day you're raising two kids and at night you started working as a stripper. Can you talk about what led to you taking that job? Like, how did that all come about?
Well, that's the thing. So the dancing part is part of, I didn't do that for that long. It wasn't years and years, it was months. And that was part of the bigger picture of I call it my crazy time. So that was almost like, that wasn't even the part I regret. It kind of took off from there. And it was interesting because it wasn't, and I always correct people when they say, oh, you were just doing what you needed to do to put food on the table. That's not my story. I respect people who that's a whole other thing. That's what makes my story so strange is that, no, I was married. There was food on the table. It was, I was still battling my body image issues. I was in really good shape, but felt like I needed to be in better shape. At this point, again, I had been through a tremendous amount of trauma. I was with somebody who I really did believe that I was, I needed to be, I didn't feel loved. And so I felt if I wasn't going to be loved, at least I could be wanted or desired, because that's what I felt. So I had to sort of make myself as desirable as possible, while still trying to be the best mom. There's only so many hours in the day. But I had a trainer who told me, I could get you to look like a fitness model in a few weeks. And so I thought, okay, like I want to do that. But I felt guilty I had to pay him, and I felt guilty taking money from the household. My kids were little, I wasn't working, I was with them, and I thought, I'm not going to take money from my husband to pay for my training. It felt selfish. So I needed to pay for it, but I needed to get a job where I could be home with my kids all day and still be there for them when they woke up at night. And I know it's not a normal thing, like, oh, stripping, like nobody thinks that. But at the time, he and I were going to strip clubs. We were going to swinging clubs. Like it to me, it didn't seem so crazy. And so I thought, okay. And I think there was part of me where I've always liked to dance. I still dance. And I think there was a part of me that felt a little bit of control when I was dancing. And so I decided, okay, so I'll be with my kids. I'll tuck them into bed at night, and then I'll drive to the club. I'll do that until 4:00 in the morning, come home, go to the gym, come back, take a shower, and then be up with them. And so,
Wow.
yeah, so I'd go days without sleeping, and I wasn't eating. And, I always say I was probably one of the only dancers who, oh, it's 11 o'clock. I've got to go to my locker and get my protein shake. And that's what it was. I didn't drink. I didn't do a single drug. I mean, none of it made sense. None of it made sense.
Well, eventually in your 30s, you entered a treatment program, and it helped you with your eating disorders. And you wrote, while I had pretty much given up on myself, I could not give up on my sons. Can you talk about that? Because I'm sure that must have, taken a lot of courage for you to, recognize the problem and to seek out treatment for it.
Yeah. And they saved me a couple of times. It's, I also say that I gave them life, but they saved mine, because you get to a point. So at that point, when I went into the treatment program, I always knew I had a problem. I wasn't in denial, but I wasn't ready to get better, or I didn't find the right program. And at that point, I had given up on myself. I really, to be very honest, there were times when I thought, not only did I not deserve to be here, but I was exhausted. I was exhausted from life. And I kind of thought, okay, if this kills me, it kills me. But I knew my mother was so incredible. Like, she really was such an amazing person, an amazing mother, that I thought my kids deserved better. I felt that I just wanted to be what they deserved. So even though I was kind of done with myself, they deserved better. And not just me being there. They deserved that when I'm talking to them and they're talking to me, that I'm listening to them. I'm not counting my calories. I'm not thinking about what exercise I should have done. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to eat, what I did eat, what I'm eating. I wanted to be present for them. And in order to do that, I had to get healthy. And so and it was tough. Like, when I went into the program, there were 3 days a week. I couldn't be there to pick them up from school. I was going to get there later. I had a tremendous amount of guilt about that. But then it didn't take long before I realized, no, I'm doing this for them. And that kept me, anytime I kind of thought about slipping, I'm like, no, I'm here for a reason. And they kept me, and that saved me for sure.
For sure. It's amazing what a great motivator kids are. And they don't even know it. You know what I mean? I mean, I lost two people close to me, and having two little kids to take care of and distract you. And, they don't know if you're having a bad day. They don't know if somebody's sick or if somebody's passed. You still got to go play that game. You know what I'm saying? And, and so I can totally relate on that level. Now, after you got treatment, this is something else that you wrote. You said, I am now able to live my life without food anxieties getting in the way. Tell me about that. Tell me about how that, what a life change it was for you to be able to address the problem and to be able to start to overcome it.
Well, you know what? It's taken years. And I see, and I will tell you that part of my story is that I did get better. I did get recovery. But then, coming out of the life that I was living, I had a lot of shame. And so I ended up doing amazing things and helping people with body image issues and being the person I wanted to be, and then relapsing and crashing again because
you did.
Yes, because I had to. Absolutely, that was my thing. I was doing great, but I had never really dealt with some of those issues. So I looked back and kind of went, I don't deserve to be happy. I don't deserve to be healthy. And I'm getting accolades for how I'm helping people, but I don't deserve that because they don't know what I used to do. They don't know the kind of person that I was and the double life that I was living. And I crashed again and even relapsed with my food. And that was when my kids saved me again, because there were times when, and I talk about this, how I would drive them to school. And we were talking 5 years ago, not a lifetime ago. And I would drive my kids to school and I would be crying all day, all night. And then I would fix myself, take them to school in the car, be telling myself, laugh at something, smile at something so they don't know how sad you are, sing along to the radio so they don't know how sad you are. And I would drop them off, and then on my drive home, pass by an underpass and think to myself, would it hurt? Would it be quick? What if I just turned my steering wheel a little bit to the right? Every day for over a year, I thought that. So
I actually learned a lesson through a former WWE wrestler years ago. You know how on television when they're coming to the ring and they announce their weight? And he told me years ago that whenever they would announce his weight, it was complete fabrication because he never weighed himself. And he said that the reason he never weighed himself is because in your head, you think that there's a certain number that you're supposed to weigh. And even if you look good and you feel good and you think you look good in the mirror, yeah, but I'm 5 pounds heavier than I'm supposed to be.
I never weigh myself, ever.
Yes.
Ever. Even when I go to the doctor, if I have to, I'm like, don't even tell me. I don't. But you know what, though? That's another problem that look, I found. That's why I have an issue with the fitness industry in some ways. I mean, everything is about being weighed and measured. And I had a situation years ago, but it's come up a lot, where years ago, and I just wanted to be stronger and have more energy, and I needed some ideas, and I went to a gym, and the trainer was, okay, well, we need to weigh and measure you. And I said, no, I don't need to be weighed, because it's not about weight. I just want to feel, I need some new ideas. I want to feel stronger and have more energy. And he said, yeah, but we need to know where you're starting from, or else you won't know how you're getting better. I said, no, I will, because I'll feel stronger and I'll have more energy. And he said, but no, we need to weigh you.
Yes.
Because he said, but how will you know if you're improving? And I'm like, because I'll have more energy. And I'm like, come on. But they couldn't. And in the end, I didn't work with him. He couldn't figure out how to, because my goal wasn't a number. It wasn't a size.
Right.
It was a feeling.
100% agree. 100% agree.
But the problem is we confuse physical appearance with physical fitness. And that's a problem.
Well, let's talk about these workshops that you created. You created a workshop called Fit versus Fiction.
Yes.
You said that you were saddened by how many young kids were struggling with body image and you felt compelled to do something. Tell me, what is fit versus fiction? How does it work?
Funny, because it wasn't something I planned. It just kind of happened. I got out of my recovery program, and I actually at the time thought I never want to deal with body image stuff again. But I really, unless I was going to move to a deserted island and never see another person, that wasn't going to happen. But my kids were quite young at the time, and they would come home from school, and I found that what they were learning about health was a lot about weight and a lot about diet. And I was quite upset by it. And
sure, they're getting letters about the BMI.
Well, it was just all bad. I mean, their school was not a fan of mine in the end, because they brought in, the school board had brought in this healthy eating initiative, and it was really demonizing different foods, and it was really unhealthy. And I had heard from parents who said that their kids were sneaking into the bathroom during lunch to eat their snacks because they didn't want to be teased, and it was all kinds of wrong. And I went into the school, and I just said, listen, I need to give a different message. This is really unhealthy. I did not want to see kids going through what I went through. I did not want to see parents going through what my mother went through, watching her child, starve herself. And so I remember the principal at the time said, okay, come in on Friday. And I'm like, what? Wait, huh? Like, I had nothing. I didn't have a program. And I just put some pictures on a bristle board, and I went in, I spoke with the grade 8s, and I just kind of told my story, and it resonated. And I learned, I didn't talk at the kids, I spoke with the kids, and they went home and told their parents about it, and other teachers told other teachers about it. And then I was getting calls from other schools to come and talk, and I realized this is a thing we really need to talk about. And I mean, I would get emails from kids who were telling me that, when the new healthy programs came into their school, I remember a girl in high school messaging me saying all of her friends now are terrified to eat, because now they're telling them about calories, or they'll sit down at the dinner table, and instead of talking about how was your day, it was how many calories are in this. I mean, it was creating so much stress, and I get the intention was to make kids healthier, but it was having the opposite effect. And I couldn't not say something. It just, so I would, if anytime I would listen to the radio or see something on TV from a local show talking about stuff that I felt was unhealthy, I would call them, I would email them, and I would end up going on and talking about it. And so I created this program where I did go to schools and also do one-on-one and speak with parents. And it was to break down the myths related to fitness and beauty. And there's some gender stuff in there. I started speaking to grade 4s, and then I was asked to speak to kids as young as grade 1. Because
really?
Yes. And I remember the first time I did a class. And I remember I was going into a school because I would actually speak to grade 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8 in the elementary schools. I'd be there all day. And this one school, the first time they said, can you do the 1 and 2s as well? And I'm like, I can try, but I don't know. Because I go in and my program, it's interactive. It's full of pictures and stories and games. And I warn the teachers, there's a lot of, I want them to talk. I want them to yell stuff out. So they enjoy it. And I remember speaking to the grade 1s and 2s, and they're so little. And then this boy was walking out of the class, and he stopped and he said, that wasn't boring at all. And I'm like, that's like the best compliment. We spend too much time, a lot of people who will go to pages, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and they don't make us feel good. But we think that we need to aspire to that, but it doesn't make us feel good. We need to stop that and only use social media to feel better. So find the people who are sending you the messages that will build you up. And that's
absolutely not just that, but they got to stop letting followers and likes dictate, how successful you are. You know what I'm saying? Because I find with young kids, how many followers you have on Instagram, how many likes your post get means the world to them.
Yeah, and it's not just young kids. I mean, that's the thing.
Yes.
Too. I mean, it's a weird thing. It's a very strange thing. But I think we all need to step back, especially hard now, because now when we're trapped in this situation, and all we have for a lot of this is our only social life for most people. A lot of people who, especially kids who aren't in school, who aren't, if they were involved in clubs or sports or some kind of activity, they're not doing that now. So their entire life is in their phones. And that you sort of forget that there is more out there. So all of your information is through that. And that's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing. But the more information you have, the better you are. It's just where you're getting that information. You can use tons of information to make you feel lousy, or you can go to the information that makes you feel good.
Let's move on. I want to talk about your book, The Good Stripper. So this is your memoir, but it almost reads like I was saying earlier, almost reads like a movie screenplay. How difficult was it for you to put your story on paper?
It's interesting because I needed to do it. For years, I had some friends who were telling me to do it, and I thought I couldn't for a lot of reasons. I thought I couldn't because of my children. They didn't know a lot of stuff. I thought people would be mad. And I also thought it was too much. Like, there's just a lot of stuff. And I thought, I had a therapist once tell me years ago, before half of it, that it would be a great movie, but nobody would believe that everything happened to one person, I thought, how am I going to do it and make it make sense? And then I just got to a point that I was like, you know what? I've just got to do it. I just have to, it's weird, but I felt like I needed to get this out. I just needed to even if no one read it, I just needed to get it out. And I just gave myself some time and I wrote it. And the actual writing of it, people say it must have been really cathartic. Yes, there were parts. I mean, I learned a lot about myself as I was writing it. I mean, I think everybody should write their story. I think even just for themselves, as I was writing it, there were things that I kind of went, oh, wait, I was holding on to certain things I felt guilty about. And then in writing it, revisiting it, I kind of went, no, I know why I thought that now. I know why I did that now. And I was able to kind of forgive myself for certain things. But it was also very painful because I was writing about years and years and years of trauma in a very short period of time. I mean, I wrote it in about 7 or 8 months. And I would literally sit at my laptop and I would sometimes write through the night. I'd write until 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning because I didn't want to stay in that part of my life for more than a day. I wanted to write it and be done with it. Because I get very honest. I mean, I don't try to make myself look good. I don't hold back on details. I knew if I was going to write it, I was going to write it. And it's real and it's raw and it's gritty and it's not pretty, but it's my life. And so it was an interesting experience. I think what's been really interesting to me more than that is once I shared it. That's where the real growth came from because I put it out there. And I mean, even again, just the title, that nobody knew this. I mean, very few people knew. Even my closest friends were like, okay, I just read it and I did not know half the stuff. But so that was, I actually put it out there expecting some backlash. I was prepared. And I haven't gotten that. And
that's good.
Yeah, I think what's been amazing is that in sharing it and in doing interviews, I've had so many people message me, people I knew either when I was little or I didn't know, say to me that they connected to some part of my story. I guess that's the good part about having so many different strange things happen, is something is going to resonate with somebody. And what a lot of people tell me is that there are things they can't share. There's secrets that they can't tell. But it felt good to have somebody that they could connect with. So they'll tell me. They'll tell me that they get the sex stuff. They tell me that they get the food stuff. They tell me that about relationships. So many different things they can't share yet. But I've heard so many times, I feel less alone now. I absolutely live authentically and scars and all. And I'm not afraid to do things that are a little out of the box because everybody knows now, like all of my secrets. So I'm going to be worried about a picture I post or a quote that I post or why? Like, if anything, people would go, there she goes again. Like, I'm not shocking anybody anymore. And there's a real freedom in really being able to live your life and not care what other people think. We're supposed to live like that. There are 8 gazillion quotes on social media about just do you and just live your life. But it's not that easy because there's another quote that says, society says, live your life. And then society also says, not like that, So there's still so much judgment. But when you can really just let it out and just really be okay with how you're received, it's really liberating. So.
For sure. I remember hearing a story about an actress, and I forget her name, but there was an actress whose ex-boyfriend threatened her, I'm going to release these naked photos. And she said, the hell with you. And she released them herself.
Wow.
And right. I thought, that's amazing. That's amazing. You know what I mean? Same thing.
That's it, because that's what I said too. It's that you take the power back. So
yes.
Here, I spent years worried that, let's say I'd be walking with my kids when they were younger at the grocery store, and then somebody would come up to me and say, hey, I saw you at a strip club. Terrified. Whereas now, somebody's going to come up to me and say, hey, I know, I wrote about it. It's in my book. It's nothing. You can't shame someone who can't be shamed. Like, you can't. I've said it. I've done it. I've owned it. It's part of who I am. So you can't hurt me with my life.
What you're saying, as far as saying that people can relate to certain elements of your story, that's the reason that I created GWG, Grappling with Grief, is because a lot of people out there are dealing with grief on some level. And everybody, when they think grief, they think loss, and that's a part of it. But mental health issues, that's a form of grief. Physical health issues, that's a form of grief. A lot of people are dealing with these certain things, and they think they're alone. And so the one reason I'm telling these stories is because I want people to see you're not alone, number one. And number two, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
And that's basically what you've shown with the story. And I think that your story can help a lot of people, including young kids that are dealing, like we talked about, with social media now and the perception of what beauty is supposed to be. I think you've got a great story. I think that you're going to help a lot of people.
Thank you. I hope so. You hope that what you go through, in the end, I'll just say this. I remember years ago also one of my sons saying to me, I guess it must have been my brother's birthday or something, and they never got to meet my mother or my brother. But I remember when my son saying, well, think of it this way. If Uncle Billy didn't die, then you wouldn't have gotten an eating disorder. Then you wouldn't have gotten better. Then you wouldn't be helping people. And I'm like, well, I'd prefer to have him around. But,
yeah.
But
look at it.
But it does. You hope that it comes, that something. I think a lot of us who go through difficult times, we do come out of it wanting to help other people. You want to feel like what you've done, what you've been through, what you've survived, I want someone who is feeling like they're at the bottom right now, that they can't make it another day, to know that I've been there and I didn't want to make it another day. And thank God I did. Even when we don't think there's anything left, even when we think there's zero gas in the tank, there's something there. There's something worth trying, and that you don't have to make leaps and bounds. It's just make it one more day, and you'll see. It's when you're going through hell, keep going, right, as they say. But yeah, I think it's very important to know that there is a light, even if you can't see it. You just have to believe it's there.
Sure, for sure. Well, for more information on Marci's body image workshop, you can go to fitversusfiction.com, and her new book, The Good Stripper, a soccer mom's memoir of lost lies and lap dances, which is, like I said, an amazing title. It's available wherever books are sold. And again, we've been talking to Marci Warhaft. It's great to finally talk to you. We've been trying to set this up. Lockdowns in Ontario, Canada got in the way, but we made it happen. So it was great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.